Okay. Good Erev Shabbos, everyone. Shavua Tov. Tonight is Hey Menachem Av, which is also the yahrzeit of the Holy Ariya Kodesh, who's buried in Sfas. He lived in the years 1534 to 1572, passed away on the 5th of Av. So I'll tell a story or two of the Arizal's, of the Ari HaKodesh, father, of course, of Kabbalah. Hello, Ariel Shvuatov. Since the passing of Reb Shimon Bar Yochai, there hasn't obviously been a person on the level of Kabbalah like the Arizal. The the story goes like this: the Ari his name is Rabbi Yitzchak Luria. So he had a great uncle was a very famous Rav and halachic personality till today in Lublin in Poland in Europe. He's known as the Maharshal. Marshal was I think the great uncle, Reb Shlomo Luria, also the family Luria, the great uncle of the Ari HaKodesh. So he's in Europe, in Lublin, and the Ari HaKodesh came from Egypt. He went to Tzfas. So when the Ari HaKodesh started to teach his teachings of Kabbalah, which are even different than the teachings of the Ramak, was before him and passed away in Tzfas. We know that the Ramak was Rebecca the Ramak was eulogized by the Ari HaKadosh. The Rebbe in 1991 spoke on Hey Eor, and he said that the eulogy of the Ramak was also a eulogy that the Ari said about himself. That Kisalisa Oisei Ala Eitz, that the Ramak was one of those who died. The only reason he died was because of the sin of the Eitz, of the Eitz Hadas, of the tree of knowledge, because otherwise he had no sins. And the Rebbe applied the same thing to the Ari HaKadosh, because the Ari HaKadosh said the eulogy about the Ramak. What's interesting is, and this is my own observation, is the Rebbe spoke about this 1991, the last Hey year that he was talking. The Rebbe had a stroke in 1992 before Hey Av, and so in Hey Av 1991, the Rebbe spoke about the eulogy of the Ari HaKadosh that he made for the Ramak, and that eulogy was also for himself. So V'Amevin Yavin. So again, the Marshal, the great uncle of the Ari HaKadosh, when he heard about the Ari's ways and his new teachings, he thought, and miracles and revelations, he felt that it was maybe possibly his great nephew fell into the realms of impurity of Tuma and was actually manipulated by the forces of evil and using black magic. So the Ari felt this from the spiritual realms, that his great uncle was going to put him into a ban, into excommunication. And the Marshal Reb Shmuel Luria was a great Shlomo Luria was a great sage of his times. So he asked that two of his students, which was Reb Chaim Vital, and I think his name was Rabbi Yisrael Sirug, should go to meet the Marshal and convince him otherwise. And as a payment for that, he's going to introduce them and show them where the whereabouts of Mashiach ben David is. We know that every generation has a Mashiach. So the Mashiach of that generation is alive, as is the Mashiach ben Yosef, the son of Yosef. And he'll, as a gift for doing what he asked, he will let them know where, and they can meet the Mashiach ben David of our generation. And his name was Eliakim, son of Shmuel, and he lived in a village not far from Lublin, where they were going. It's called Tshavish, I think. And after the mission, they could go meet this Mashiach ben David, but they have to first go to the Marshal to tell him about to convince him not to excommunicate his great nephew, and that the teachings of the Ari was emes and truth, etc. So they set out to go on their trip, and they took delicacies and hot, fresh baked bread and all the goodies from Tzvas for Teidel Derech, for the travels. And they rearranged that. How did they get from Tzvas to Lublin? Those days, Tzvas to Lublin would take maybe possibly weeks or months to travel all the way from Tzvas to Lublin. There was no airplanes, and even boats would have to would dock in Turkey, and from Turkey would have to make it by wagon to Lublin. That was deep into Eastern Europe. So the Ari arranged for a flying cloud. A flying cloud took the Chaim Vital and Rabbi Yisrael Srug, and they arrived right before Mincha that same day. And they waited till after Mincha. And they went into the shul of the Marshal. And they said that they're here as a mission from the Ariyah Kaddish, his great nephew, and they know that he's aware of his intention to excommunicate him. But before he has to hear their side of this of what's going on, and to prove that this is a real mission. Look, this is the breads from Tzfas we just brought, and they were baked this morning, and they're still fresh, they're still warm, because we came here through Kitzur Shulchan Aruch, through a flying cloud that was arranged by the Ariyah Kaddish. So the Marshal, so they agreed to listen to them, but they said, in order for us to talk to you, it has to be in private. So they went to the basement of the Marshal's house, which was a dark room under the ground, and they started to teach the secrets. You know, Reb Chaim Vital, all the writings that we have of the Ariyah Kaddish was written not by the Ariyah Kaddish himself, but by his student Reb Chaim Vital, the Eitz Chaim. All the Kisvei Arizal were written by Reb Chaim Vital. So Reb Chaim Vital was, of course, extremely knowledgeable of his Rebbe's, his teachers' teachings. And so he started to teach different ideas to the Marshal, the great uncle of the Ariyah Kaddish, of what his nephew was teaching. So you shouldn't think that these are teachings of, God forbid, Tumah, but these are holy teachings of the secrets of the Zohar and secrets of Kabbalah. And when they started to teach the teachings, the whole room lit up from the light of the teachings of the secrets of Torah. Similarly, we have to mention the Baal Shem Tov and Motzaei Shabbos, that when the Magidim is rich came also suspicious of the Baal Shem Tov, which is a tradition. When something new, there's suspicion. So the Baal Shem Tov would start to teach from the Arizal, from the Eitz Chaim to the Magid, and when he started to teach it to him, the whole room lit up, and it wasn't just a teaching of ideas, but he saw the teachings. It was in 3D, real 3D. It was literally when he talked about the angels and the revelations. He was able to see it. The whole room lit up. So the teachings of Chassidus, of Kabbalah, when you teach these great teachings, it becomes alive. So when Reb Chaim Vital teaches the teachings to the Marshal, the great uncle of the Ari, he sees all the light, and he realized that the Ariyah Kaddish was, of course, holy, and he walked back any kind of intention to, God forbid, excommunicate his nephew. The Ariyah Kaddish, not only that, he became a strong supporter. Okay, so they accomplished their mission, and now it's time for them, so to say, to collect the reward. So they left from Lublin to go to the city of Tijavich, I guess it's called, to go meet this Rebbe Yaakov ben Shmuel, who would be the Mashiach ben David of our generation, of their generation, of the years of the Ari. So they make it to they make it to the city outside Lublin, and when they ask anyone, "Where's this Rebbe Yaakov?" no one knows who they're talking about. They don't know any such person, so they don't know what to do. So they finally go to the rabbi of the city, and the rabbi of the city said that, listen, we have to meet this Rabbi Yaakov ben Shmuel, and he's like not sure what they're talking about. He doesn't understand the urgency. Finally, they have to reveal that they're students from Dari, and why they were sent to go meet the Marshal. And because of that, they feel that they want to meet him. That's their reward, and he's the Mashiach ben David. So when the rabbi hears that, he himself goes deeper into the investigation, and they find this where he lives. This Rabbi Yaakov ben Shmuel. He's a very poor person that lives mamish at the end of the city. But now the rabbi wanted himself to see what's going on, so he joined them. The three of them go to the house. They knock on the door. And a woman opens the door, the wife, of course, of this man. And they say that they're here to see her husband, Rabbi Yaakov ben Shmuel. She says, okay, she lets them in. He's lying there very sick on bed. And he said, what can I do for you? They said, we're sent by the Holy Arizal. He gave us a mission, and as a reward, he said that you're the Mashiach of our generation, and we want to meet. So this man, Rabbi Yaakov, gets very serious and says, "Oh, what did Arizal do This is going to cost everyone. And he got very sick, and he says, I'm going to pass away now, but I want you to make sure I get buried in the city of the Jewish cemetery, and all you should put on my plaque is, here lived a very honest Jew. And it so happened, he got sick and he passed away. They buried him, and as agreed with what he wanted on his tombstone. But afterwards, during the Shiva, they went to go visit the wife, and they asked her, what could you tell us about your husband? She says, ever since we got married, he was very sick. Oh, the whole time he was in bed. So I had to work to support us, and he would eat. I'd make him food, but he was mamish sick in bed the whole time. The only thing was that every Friday afternoon, right before Shabbos, he would get this strong energy like a lion, and he was the most healthy, strong person. It was all of a sudden our small house expanded to this huge palace, and then all of a sudden the table was huge and set with beautiful settings and all the beautiful delicacies and foods you can imagine. And tons of guests would come, special holy rabbis, and my husband would lead this great Shabbos, and they would daven together, and he'd eat, and they would sing. And as soon as Motzaei Shabbos came, he'd lie back on his bed, and he would become sick, the house would become small, everything would disappear. And this happened every Shabbos in their marriage. So the great rabbis from Tzfas said, why didn't you ever tell anyone about this? I mean, this is not regular. She goes, I didn't know it wasn't regular. I thought it's normal. I mean, I thought every groom is a prince, is a king, and every bride is a queen. So I figured that's what Hashem gives every Jewish person. It comes Shabbos, their house expands and the light comes in. So the author of the story, our good friend, our dear friend from Tzfas, Rabbi Rachmiel, tells us that there was those who went to the graveyard of this city and actually found this tombstone that does say, here lies an honest Jew, that is in the city of outside of Lublin, of Tishech, I think, how do you pronounce it again? And Tishavich. And it's still there till today. And this was the Mashiach ben David of the generation of Dari. Just a few more stories before we go to halacha, because it is Motzaei Shabbos and it's 3 weeks. And it's Motzaei Shabbos of the Arizal's yard site. So I want to say it's 2 stories. One story is the story of, a few stories here actually. There's one story of, Reb Zevin tells the story of Motzaei Shabbos. Some of you are enjoying, like I see, Ariel's having a little bit of his Malav Malka. So some of you are enjoying your Malav Malka tonight. And we know it's the 3 weeks, and the 3 weeks of Malav Malka, usually tradition is we don't eat meat or drink wine, of course, during the 9 days. And that's even true Motzaei Shabbos, so much so that with the halacha is that when you make Havdalah Motzaei Shabbos, you can't drink the wine. So either you have a child drink the wine or grape juice, or you make on something that's not wine, like tea, like I did last night myself. I'm in Yerushalayim, it's ready day, Sunday morning. So there was the holy tzaddik, the Abd Rav, so the Oyev Yisrael, the Rav of Abd. So he had a custom to make, of course, a beautiful Malav Malka every week. So it was Shabbos Chazon. And Shabbos Chazon, his students came and asked him, what would the Rebbe like for his Malav Malka? Eating-wise, food-wise, because it's the 3 weeks. He says, in my whole life, I've never had Malav Malka and dairy. I always had meat or meaty foods when it comes to Malav Malka. And that has to be today true as well, even though it's the 3 weeks, but Malav Malka is Malav Malka. And they went outside those days, of course. They slaughtered a chicken. So it wasn't beef, but it was a chicken. And they made roast chicken. And they had a Malav Malka. And they sat until Alos HaShachar, till the morning, Sunday morning. At some point in the Malav Malka, a bird flew in to the house through the door. It was the summer, so it was hot, like now. And the students of the Abd Rav were going to shoo away the bird who comes into his house. And he says, no, let it be. This is the reincarnation of a great soul who wasn't careful in Malav Malka. So they sent him down from heaven to see that even in the 9 days, we eat even meat in Malav Malka when it comes. So this is not a custom that I could say is universal, to eat fleishiks or chicken even on Malav Malka of Shabbos Chazon, of Motzaei Shabbos Chazon. But this is the story of the Abd Rav. And so we see this, from this we actually learn how special it is to have Malav Malka. Another story about the 3 weeks. We know that I don't know if we told. I can't remember if we told the story last week. I don't think we did. But the story of the Chos of Lublin, the Chos of Lublin, the Holy Chos of Lublin was a student of Rabbi Elimelech of Lezhensk, was of course a student of the Maggid, the student of Baal Shem Tov. So the Chos of Lublin, there's a lot of stories that it's connected to Tisha B'Av, and of course the most unfortunate of all stories is the Chos of Lublin passed away on Tisha B'Av. There's a very difficult story that's told about the Chos of Lublin of how he passed away on Tisha B'Av, because the Chos of Lublin was part of a group of Rebbes from Poland that were very convinced that the war between the Tsar and Napoleon was the war of Gog and Magog, and this would usher in the coming of Mashiach. And there was actually a disagreement between the camp of the Chos of Lublin, the Koshin Samagid, and others, and the Alter Rebbe. The Alter Rebbe was, we know, a supporter. Not that the Tsar was any friend of the Jew, and the Tsar was a raging anti-Semite with horrible decrees and limitations on the Jews, and Napoleon was promising freedom for the Jews. So the Chos and the Koshin Samagid and others felt that maybe it was best for Napoleon to win. The Alter Rebbe was against that idea, and it came down to who's going to blow shofar first in that year. So the Chosa and the Koshin Samagid woke up very early, and they went to the mikveh and they davened, and they got very fast to Shochanad, and then of course they did Shemona Esrei. How fast could you do Shemona Esrei and Rosh Hashanah? And then they did Krias HaTorah. How fast could you do Krias HaTorah? And then by the time they came to the blowing of the shofar, the Alter Rebbe woke up. He went to the mikveh before he even started davening. He just blew the shofar. So the time they blew the shofar, the Alter Rebbe had already blown shofar, and of course we all know the story that the Napoleon was defeated and the Tsar won. But nevertheless, it seems like from the story of Rab Zevin that the Chosa and the Koshin Samagid still saw, even in the defeat of Napoleon, that this is the time for Mashiach, and they made up that they made it between them and for some of their students that they're going to bring tremendous simcha. It's actually a very telling story of what happened in October 7th, but they're going to make a very strong simcha on Simchas Torah. And they're going to, through that simcha, they're going to usher in the days of Mashiach. And so what happened, unfortunately, was the Koshin Samagid died at Erev Sukkot. The two students that joined them, they each had very horrible stories that happened around their place. They were all trying to do the Simchas Torah. Things from heaven were not in agreement of what we call pushing the kates, pushing the geula. And the Chazal started to feel uncertain about it, but he wanted to go forward with it. So they started to say a lot of l'chaim to bring a lot of energy into the power of Mashiach. And they were drinking so much wine and beer that the Chazal in his private room, or in his office, in his little yeshiva room, had a high window, and they put all the glass bottles on top of the window. Just that's where they stored them. And the Chazal felt a lot of forces of evil, or forces of that were against him, that he was vulnerable. So he told the students, yes, they have to watch him the whole time. But he saw that the students were drifting. So he called his wife and told his wife, I can't trust my students. You have to watch me the whole time. Something could happen. And his wife stood there and she watched him. And at one point, there was a knock on the door and a cry from a child, that she heard the voice of a child crying. So she ran to the door to open the door. When she comes back, the Chazal was not in the room anymore. And only later at midnight, they found him. It seemed like he fell out the window. But the problem is that the window was high, and the glass bottles were still there. So what happened, we don't know. But evidently he had the effects of falling out the window. And his body was all broken. Nevach, and they carried him to his room. He had a lot of enemies or people that were against the teachings of Chassidus of the Chozeh, like the eyes in a cup. And they were celebrating that, the Chozeh is going to pass away. So he says, when I pass away, everyone's going to be crying. And he passed away on Tisha B'Av. So what that all means is mystical. But just to finish off with a positive note, the Chozeh Lublin had a watch in his house and the watch in his house didn't tell the time. Usually time says, how far are we from creation? Every minute is a minute further away. The Choz's time clock was always counting forward. It was counting a minute closer to Mashiach. Every time the clock struck it was another 15 minutes, another 20, another hour closer to the coming of Mashiach. So it's all a question, again, like we spoke about the vision. We have to know where we're looking forward. The Choz was always looking forward to Geula, even to push the Kates. May it be talk in our times that we should see the Mashiach Tzidkenu, and this Tisha B'Av we should not, like the Chozah say, cry in Tisha B'Av, but we should cry tears of joy in Tisha B'Av with the coming of Mashiach Tzidkenu. Okay, everyone, we have a few minutes. I know we've taken a little extra time for stories, but it is Shabbos Chazon and Shabbos before Tisha B'Av, and it's the yard side of the Ariya Kadosh. Let's bring up the Shulchan Aruch. Hold on, let's get the text. Let me just bring up the text here. Okay, here we go. We're holding the laws of Krias HaTorah. We're holding halacha ches. So it says like this. Once the Baal Korah starts to read the Krias HaTorah, it's forbidden to talk. You go to any shul today, the signs, and this is not just wasteful talk, but this also includes divrei Torah. Even Torah talk is forbidden during the Krias HaTorah. Even one should not speak between people who are called up. Even in between the calling up, you should not speak even divrei Torah. It's surely forbidden to leave the shul once they're reading the Torah. If it's between people going up to the aliyahs, so it should say for Torah Megulal that the Sefer Torah is rolled up, like our custom is if you really need to. I think we did this last week. You're allowed to leave the basic knesses between the people getting the aliyahs. Okay, law number 9. When there's a priest, a kohen, a Levi kohen Yisrael, right? So we have a kohen, a priest in the basic knesses. The kohen gets the first aliyah. It's not important if the kohen is a learned person or not. The kohen, as being a kohen, it's his right to get the first aliyah. Adam kosher, as long as he's a worthwhile person, that he does have to be, but he gets the first aliyah. Who kohedim afilu talmid chacham? He comes before even a Torah scholar. Now this is a complicated question. That if the kohen could say, no, it's okay, don't give me the aliyah, give it to someone else of more respect, a talmid chacham. We don't do that. Now, why I say it's a complicated question? Because sometimes you have a lot of times in a minyan where someone needs an aliyah, whether it's a yard side or bar mitzvah. I just had it now this week in Shul Mincha, where someone has if you need more than one aliyah, or you're short of aliyahs, about asking the kohen to leave the room. The kohen can't be in the room in moichel, but you could ask the kohen to leave the room. That's also frowned upon, and a kohen surely doesn't have to do it. You can't force a kohen to leave. But I'm not going to say it doesn't happen. It could sometimes happen, because sometimes we need an aliyah. So they'll ask the kohen to step out, although it's not something that's preferred. And after the kohen comes the Levi. I'm biased because I'm a Levi, so I get the aliyah. If I'm the only Levite, I get the aliyah after the kohen. If the kohen steps out, then there's no obligation to give me aliyah. And if there's no Levi, kohen is a kohen asher alabim kohen, then the custom is, what happens if there's no Levi and there's a kohen? The same kohen, he has to get the same aliyah twice. The reason is because if you're going to call a second kohen, so then we would say the reason we called the second kohen because something was wrong with the first kohen, that he didn't have the qualifications of a kohen. Maybe his mother did something that would affect his being a kohen, or his father did something that would affect his being a kohen, like he was a chalal. So therefore, the same kohen gets the aliyah second time. And you say bimkoim halevi. So he adds that you should say bimkoim levi. Means the Levi is supposed to be getting this aliyah, but we're giving the kohen a second aliyah in the place of the Levi. V'mein kohen basic knesses. Now the question is like this: What happens if there's a Levite in the shul, but there's no Kohen? Could you go straight to Yisrael or not? So again, this is not such a simple question. Let's see what the Kitzur says. V'mein Kohen b'beis hakneses, if there's no Kohen in the shul, Kohen b'mkohen Levi or Yisrael. So then you could do either a Levi or Yisrael. We know that it's brought down in the writings of history, of Chabad history, that on the aliyah of the, I think when the Tzemach Tzedek became 3 and they gave an aliyah, so they had a Levi, they didn't have a Kohen. So by the Alter Rebbe was his grandfather, was there obviously, and the Alter Rebbe was happy that they gave the aliyah to the Levi and not to do Yisrael b'mkohen Levi. The Alter Rebbe preferred, even if there's no Kohen, to try to give it to the Levi. Again, I'm biased to this law because I'm a Levi, but either way, that's the story. But here in the Shulchan Aruch it says you could give either a Levi or a Yisrael in the place of a Kohen. V'yesh likru says Yisrael gadol b'Torah shenimtza sham, and then already you should go after who's a greater Torah scholar. V'ayim ein kan kohen Levi b'mkohen Kohen. So if you take a Levi, then you go Levi b'mkohen Kohen, or Yisrael b'mkohen Kohen, or Yisrael in the place of a Kohen. V'im karu Yisrael b'mkohen Kohen, and if we call Israelite, means not a Kohen or not a, there's no Kohen, but there's no, and they don't call a Levi, but they call a Yisrael in the place of a Kohen. Ein Kohen Achar of Levi, of course, a Levi cannot get an aliyah after Yisrael. So a Levi is restricted, like the Kohen, to either get the first and the second aliyah, or maftir. But a Levi does not get a third, a fourth, or fifth aliyah on Shabbos. And also Chabad's custom is we do not get achron either. If there's an additional aliyah, so the Levi does not get. Yishuv shekulam kohenim leviim. What do you do if you have a congregation where everyone is kohenim and everyone's leviim? So how do you do that? And Yasser She'ez Chacham Echis Angu. The Kitzur Shulchan Aruch doesn't want to get into the details. He goes ask your local rabbi what you should do in such a situation. Okay, footnote number 11. So he says the Kohen is called up and then the Levite. He says Gabbai whose function is to call up the Olim. So what the Kitzur, the footnotes are saying, what is a Gabbai? A Gabbai is the person whose job is to call up the person who gets called up to the Torah. So the person who gets called up, who calls up people, so the thing is, first goes a Kohen. If there's a Kohen, goes a Levi. If there's no Kohen, if there's no Levi, then they give the Kohen, the same Kohen, 2 aliyahs in a row. If there, and again, we don't give a second Kohen because then it could be people will think something's wrong with the first Kohen. If there's no Kohen, then you could do a Levi b'mkom Kohen or a Yisrael b'mkom Kohen, but you have to keep in mind that if you're going to give a Yisrael first, you can't give that Levi later. So if you only have enough people to give that you should give you have to give the Levi first, because Levi could either get a Levi or maftir if there's maftir, but not every kriya has maftir. Okay, footnote number 12. A Levi is not called afterwards. Okay, lest someone who just entered the synagogue think that the first Ola, who it will be remembered is still standing at the reader's lectern as a Kohen. So the reason why they say, why can a Levi get an aliyah after a scholar? Let's say you call up, there's no Kohen, and you call up a Yisrael b'mkom Kohen. It's 2 things. The reason we call out Yisrael b'mkom Kohen or Levi b'mkom Kohen is that no one should misunderstand. Later, the person shouldn't go around and say, look, I got the aliyah of Kohen, I'm a Kohen. And so therefore we say clearly, you're not a Kohen. It's a Yisrael being called up in the name of a Kohen, a Levi being called up in the name of a Kohen. That if you're going to call up a Levi after this Yisrael and the person wasn't, and someone walks into shul and doesn't see that the person was called up was Yisrael b'mkom Kohen, just sees a person standing there, and then they're calling up a Levite, may think that the person wasn't a Yisrael but a Kohen. And if then later this person claims to be a Kohen, they'll say, I saw him, and aliyah as a Kohen. Either way, these are cautious things that we just do. Although you could ask the same thing apply if he didn't come up and he just saw the person being called up, maybe thought he's a Kohen. But either we want to avoid anyone misrepresenting themselves as a Kohen. And by the way, it's not a far idea. It's something that's happened, unfortunately, many times, and it still happens still today, where people, for some reason, like to misrepresent themselves as a Kohen, even if they're not. Okay, I know we had a short time to learn the laws, but we did spend a little more time on stories because it is, again, Shabbos Chazon, the time of vision and stories and getting ourselves with chizik for the Geula. So one thing is, anyone who didn't have a Malav Malka, please eat something Malav Malka. Again, I'm not encouraging or supporting the idea of having chicken. That's the story of the Abdi Rav, and that's Rebbe. That's Meiser Rebbe, Meiser Rav. But just to show you the importance of eating a Malav Malka, and also the tzipui for Geula. I mean, the story we had of the Chaz of Lublin, of his burning desire to bring hasten the days of the coming Geula, made speedily in our time. I wish everyone a Shavua Tov, a safe Shavua, Klal Yisrael, for Am Yisrael, and we should have the Gula Mitzvah Shlema. Take care and thank you for joining.
Thank you.